Einstein was wrong, and he knew it. Hello, my friends. My name is JC, and I'm your physical ascension guide. And today, that's what we're going to be talking about: is how Einstein knew he was wrong, why physicists like Don Hoffman are wrong, and scientists like Greg Brandon is right. And what does all of that have to do with the Kundalini and God and all of that? So we're going to tie all of that together, okay? First of all, I just for my friends out there that are familiar with me, I want to show you my new white hoodie. I kind of feel like after this last episode I had, that I kind of went from Gandalf the Grey to Gandalf the White. It's kind of weird. Here's my book that I just wrote. You can see it too well in here. The Law, God equals you, the God equation. Again, this is I don't even know how this came out of me. I'm not a physicist. I'm not a mathematician, and maybe that's why, because I've seen it from outside the box. But excuse me. All of this ties in together with consciousness. So Einstein's theory, or his equation, was E equals mc squared, right? And that's supposed to describe reality. But he purposefully left out consciousness. And that's created all kinds of problems. And there's all kinds of problems they can't figure out. And there's two reasons. It is the way they treat zero and consciousness. You're conscious. How can that not be part of the equation of what reality is? So the reason Einstein kept it out is because they couldn't, at the time, they could not measure consciousness, and he thought that, it must not be part of the equation. But you have to remember that energy was the same way, right? Energy has not always been able to be measured. We could show it was there, but we couldn't measure it. So we knew it was part of the equation. That's the same with consciousness. We can prove that it's there. We can show that it's there. We all know that it's there. We just can't measure it quite right yet. Right? So we have to put it back into the equation. And I even offer some ways to measure it. So Don Hoffman will tell you that the universe, reality, is just some cold, dead interface system. Well, it's not. It's conscious. And that's the problem, I think, too, is scientists don't want to put consciousness into it, because consciousness proves that reality is alive. And that's what Greg Brandon says. Reality is alive. Reality is God. So let me put it to you this way. I said this last time in my last video. This book. Okay. I had to have a conscious thought before I wrote the book. I had to plan it. What's it going to be about? You can't just, there's a book, right? You have to think about it. That's consciousness. That's part of the equation of making the book. That's part of the equation of making reality. And I had lost my train of thought. What I was going to say is, when you prove that reality is alive, that proves God. And that leads to self-responsibility, because we have free will. Let's take this. There's a school shooting recently, or a church shooting. People are like, well, God wasn't protecting the people in the church. Protecting them from what? We have free will. So what's he supposed to protect them from? The person doing bad? That person has free will. So what? God is supposed to come down and be like, no, you can't do that. That's a tyrant. We have free will. We're free. So that person has the choice to go hurt those people. That person is disconnected from God, from source, from love. That's on that person. That's not on God. When bad things happen in life, at least in my life, from my personal experience, almost every single thing was done by another human being, not by the Creator. Excuse me. So, how did I even get here? Especially if I'm not a mathematician or a scientist or anything. Well, I started thinking about Terrence Howard's math problem. I know, right? Of all things. And this is not woo. This is facts and reality. Okay? So what they did is they made 0 an annihilator because it takes away consciousness and God. The truth is that 0 is a mirror. It's a reflector. Right? So consciousness, reality did not start from somewhere and is moving towards an end. We like to think that. It all came from the Big Bang and it's traveling towards some finite point where it's going to end. That's not real. It's always been there and it will always be there. It just is. And that's hard to wrap your mind around. It's hard for people to accept. It just is. It's always has and always will be. It just is. And there is no beginning or no end. It's a self-generating system. It just folds back in on itself. It like regurgitates itself. It doesn't end, ever. You're in here to the end, my friend. Okay, so if you have 1 times 0, I have 1 cup, and I multiply it times nothing. Standard math, the annihilator, will tell you that the cup disappears. 1 times 0 equals 0. I have a hard time with that because I was told math reflects reality, and it don't. I multiply the cup times nothing, the cup's still here. Magic. So that describes reality. So 1 times 0 equals 1. So now we have 0 and 1. And I was thinking, okay, so what's that one guy, Thomas Campbell, I think his name is, says that in the middle of string theory, they find themselves at 1s and 0s. And I was like, okay, so reality is 1s and 0s. Well, those are 2 states. There has to be a state in the middle, a state of transformation. And it can't just be one way. It has to be going both ways. It has to oscillate back and forth. And I was thinking that, okay, I got 0 and 1. And then I was thinking, okay, so you have a man and a woman come together and they make a baby. So you got 1 times 1 equals 3. How does that work? And it has to be multiplication because addition is just stacking, where multiplication creates friction and growth. Okay, so I was thinking, well, 1 times 1 equals 3. How is that? So I got 0, 1, and 3. Well, there has to be a 2. You know, it just can't just go, if there's a 1 and a 3, I could see, but there's a 0. So 0, 1, 3, where's the 2? And that's where it kind of clicked, is that a man and a woman and energy, the oscillating part, it's 3. That's how you get 3. So all of a sudden I had 0, 1, 2, 3. 2 came from energy. So you have 0 times 1 equals 0. 0 times 1 equals 1. 0 times 1 for consciousness times 1 for energy equals 2. Then you have consciousness, energy, and matter. So you have 3. So that's how you get to 1, 2, 3. Mathematically, okay? When you get to 3, scientists say that it's a state of rest. It's not rest. When you create a baby, it doesn't just lay there. There's no rest. It's a continuous loop, right? It's renewal, regeneration. So there is no rest. A state of fusion is not rest. A state of fusion is the creation of another thing from 2 things. That's what that is. And it's not addition. It's fusion. It's multiplication. It's that friction. They're coming together to create a third thing. So, and that friction is part of it, right? You got to have energy in there. So, what does that have to do with Kundalini? Well, first of all, it shows that reality is conscious. It's alive. Look, if you use consciousness as a judgment of life, right? You say, well, this rock or this cup is not alive. It doesn't think. It doesn't have a heartbeat, right? I think. I'm alive. I have a heartbeat. I'm move. I'm not an inanimate object. I'm different from a cat and a dog by my consciousness, right? So if consciousness means you're alive and reality is conscious, that means reality is alive. And so what we're doing with Kundalini is we're trying to talk to it, connect to it. Because when you take out any part of the equation, that's when you get entropy and death. Look, if I take my book, right? If I would not have put any energy into it, it'd still be a thought. If I wouldn't have printed it, it would not be matter right now. It'd still be a thought or energy. I could still be editing it or something, right? That's how you get the energy. But it's all fused together. Now there's no state of rest because now I have to do something with it. I can read it, I can sell it, I can do all kinds of stuff with it. So give it away, whatever. So consciousness is alive, okay? Consciousness or reality is God, all of it. All of it. We are in God. We are a part of it, just like this table is. This cup is just as much a part of God because God is not consciousness. God is all of it together. Right? So you have consciousness, energy, and matter, and that makes up reality. So God is the whole of that, not just consciousness. So when these people are like, oh, I'm going to have a Kundalini awakening and connect to my Christ consciousness, these people have no idea what they're talking about. First of all, you're already conscious. I know that they're trying to say they're higher consciousness and all that. You don't have to correct me out there. I know what they're talking about. What I'm saying is that's not real. And, and they're doing it for selfish reasons too. I want more intuition. I want to attract more money or something like that. Nobody out there is like, I want to connect to God. Except me, I think. That's what led me on my journey. And, and I think that's part of why they're not succeeding. But also, they just don't know what they're talking about. that field of consciousness potential that's out there, that exists, an equal amount of energy and matter. You can tap into it. And that could be what you call your Christ consciousness or your higher self or whatever, of course. And you do get more clarification and stuff like that. That's how I wrote that book. But that's not Christ consciousness. That's just a made up thing, right? Like fairly recent too. That is just, it's an awakening, but you're not really like connecting to a higher self. You're connecting to yourself, basically. It's not higher. Most of you are dormant zombies. So it's not necessarily, it's a higher self. It's another state of living, I guess you could say. But the reason why I don't like it being called Christ consciousness is because people take away from the physical part inside your body that has to do with Christ. And then we have the fake religious Christ, he was a guy on a stick. I don't believe that for a second. Although they will kill you. That's obvious. They've done that over and over right in front of us forever. All this stuff is misleading, right? You have to have the true Christ awakening inside with the oil. And that helps you align with the rest of it, right? With those three things. Because you're not just aligning with consciousness. You're aligning with all of it, the whole thing. It's not just consciousness. That's kind of what I'm trying to say is you're not just activating your higher self. It's not just consciousness. You're activating the whole thing. So that's consciousness and energy and matter, right? So there's more to it. And that also is what helps lead you to it. A lot of people are just stuck in the conscious part. Oh, well, I'm just going to meditate, or I'm just going to pray, or I'm just going to believe. People don't even know what the word believe means. Believe means to do. You have to do something, right? And I'm always talking about doing something and self-responsibility. You have to do something. And even the awakening, the Kundalini awakening, is doing something in your body, and it's helping you connect to this. It opens your mind. It frees your mind from all this dogma and brainwashing and nonsense that we live in. Most people believe, or they base their entire reality on things that they're told, not on things that they observe, right? So if you think about it, most people, even yourself, most of the things that you believe because you were told. You were told this means this or that means that. You don't know. Most of the stuff that you believe, you don't know for sure, right? You have never experienced it yourself. So, a Kundalini is a physical activation of the pineal and the pituitary and the gonads. These are glands. Glands secrete fluids. We are taking these fluids and mixing them together and having an experience because it creates a form of DMT. Now, I don't think that it's necessarily these chemicals coming together. I thought that it was all the chemicals that came together that made the DMT. I don't think it's that. I think it's DMT is naturally produced on its own. It's just one of these fluids. I'm not positive. Like I said, I'm not a scientist. I don't know molecular structure and stuff like that. All right, I'm just trying to figure this out just like everyone else. But I do know that all those fluids come together and you have an experience. I do know that. And that when it's done correctly and with intent and purpose, it offers you an opportunity to see the core of reality, the being that exists at the center, the flame, right? So you look at it this way. Three things can complete a circuit. You have a full circuit, which is a 0. But you can't divide 0 by 3 evenly. So you always have this little speck. And it kind of reminds me of Horton Hears a Who, right? The speck. As I hear the speck. Me and my kids joke about that. We are the speck. But this speck is at the center, and it's what causes the constant oscillation. And it's alive and conscious, and it's self-generating. It's like a torus field. It's like the spark in the center of a toroidal field, where the toroidal field is self-generating because of the spark. It generates the spark generates the field, if that makes sense. So when you have these Kundalini awakenings, you are basically meeting that spark face to face, if you do it right, or you have some kind of crazy experience, and you are part of that spark. You're just a little section of it looking at itself. It's like it's looking in a broken mirror, and you're one of the little reflections looking back at it. That's kind of what it's like. So when someone tells you some bullshit nonsense about, oh, I had a spiritual awakening, this guy came up and touched me on the forehead and I became self-aware, that's not a spiritual awakening. All these words and phrases have been hijacked into meaningless bullshit. Becoming self-aware is not a Kundalini awakening. Experiencing face-to-face the center of reality, that is a Kundalini awakening. This other stuff is just nonsense. You do have a nerve right here, right? And it's connected, but you can tap on it all day. Yeah, it's connected to your pineal somehow. That whole sphenoid bone area, all that. But you're not going to have a Kundalini awakening. And becoming self-aware is not that. And you know, these words like woke and awake, they have been hijacked so that you don't go any further. You just think, oh, I'm self-aware. I had an awakening. That ain't shit. That you're not doing anything. Dude, you became self-aware in the machine. So what? That is not a spiritual awakening. It's not even close. That's just becoming self-aware. So there is a real physical process in your body that helps you align so that you can actually meet the Creator face to face. And the Creator is alive. God is alive. God is very alive. This nonsense that, oh, God is dead and reality is a cold, dead machine and blah, blah, blah. It's nonsense. Nonsense, guys. I'm telling you, reality is alive. It's God. And how do we get God? God equals you. That's the equation. So God is the generator. G is the generator, thought. Right? You have to start with thought. O is the oscillator, the back and forth, the energy. D is the designer of material in the material world. And U is universe. You are the universe. That's the generator, oscillator, designer equals universe. That's consciousness, energy, matter equals reality. That's God equals you. That's what that is. You are reality. So, that shows that Einstein was wrong. He was right, but he was wrong. He was right because he knew what he was doing when he took out consciousness out of the equation. You need to put it back in. And that will answer everything. Put consciousness back in to the equation and make zero a reflector. And that's it. And then have a real Kundalini awakening. These people, what is this guy's podcast? It was so retarded. Endless Possibilities podcast. Why most people fail at Kundalini awakening. This guy's got thousands of views. And he's telling people why they fell at a Kundalini awakening, and he doesn't even know what one is. He thinks he had one by some guy touching his forehead. How's that going to activate your gonads? This guy is clueless, dude. So if you really want to have a real awakening, that's why I'm here, is to help guide you and show you how to do it. It's a real physical process. Take your mineral salts. Practice the techniques. You have to do something. I love you, my friends. I ain't got nothing else today. Just circling back on the same stuff. God is alive, and there's a real way to connect. And it's a Kundalini awakening, and it's not just becoming self-aware. So if you're interested in that stuff, that's what we're going to be talking about here forever. And, go to my free website. This book is free. I have The Way on there free. They're all free PDF downloads. I got tons of other books on there from other people. If I'm going to make this available soon for a hard copy if you want to buy one, but it's not quite yet because I wanted to redo it. I had put this on the back cover, and this is the back cover, and I just don't like it. It looks more like a front cover than the front. So I took this off and put a little description of the book on it, like a normal book. It's kind of hard to read. The opening claim of originality is pretty long just in itself. It's a couple pages long. You could skip the claim of originality because it kind of makes the book redundant. And it is a little redundant in a couple of spots just because it's a new framework of looking at reality. And so the way I broke it down is just a little redundant. But you can skip around in it. It talks about the 13 laws of reality. It talks about the 5 pillars that make up those rules. it's wild. Like I said, I have no idea why it even came through me, but more and more, I feel like it's legit. You know, especially I just seen that podcast of Greg Brandon talking to Joe Rogan and saying reality is alive, it's conscious, and so that gives me some kind of I don't know, validation, I guess, saying, oh wow, I just wrote a book about that. So there you have it, my friends. Go to my website, download it for free, check it out, let me know what you think. I love you, my friends. Till next time.